What do I do in my personal Qigong practice sessions? That is going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. So this is a question I often get asked by students on some of the Long White Cloud Qigong courses, particularly, well, sometimes even just when they're finishing one of the courses, because we cover a lot of different practices even within a single course often, and particularly then also if they start to do more than one of the different courses and they start to realize there's so many different Qigong practices that they know at this point. There's no way they can possibly practice them all each day. At least certainly not if they want to get anything else done in the day. And of course, the purpose of Qigong is to support us in our lives, not to take over our lives. And they love all of the different Qigong practices. And I love this one, this one, this one. What am I going to do? How am I going to do my practices going forward? How am I going to choose to do that? Now, I think I've made a vlog about this in the past, about the sort of principles behind how you might choose which practices to do on a regular basis if you do know a lot of different Qigong practices. If I haven't, I'll check, and I'll probably make one if I haven't yet. But as part of this, as part of them asking me about that, they ask, well, what do I do as my regular Qigong practice, as an example? And that's a valid thing to ask, because of course I know lots of different Qigong practices. I can't fit them all in every day either. I'm very busy with other things. The reality of being a Qigong teacher, such as myself, is that a lot of my day is spent doing much what you do in any other job. Sitting at a computer, doing admin tasks, writing, researching, all that other stuff that goes into running a business. Then, of course, teaching Qigong, but it's like I don't just do Qigong practice all day. I have to fit it into a very busy schedule often. And so I need to pick and choose. And there are a few different, I guess, things that affect what I choose to do. So one being just what I feel like. Sometimes I just feel like, hey, I feel like doing these practices, so I'll do them. Other times, maybe what I particularly need at a time, I'll feel drawn to, or have something specific that I'm trying to resolve or balance or strengthen in myself, and I'll pick practices based on that. Other times based on, on my work, on what I'm planning to teach. Maybe if I'm working on course materials around a particular set of practices, well, for a period of time, I'll really go deep into those practices, particularly if I haven't focused on them for a while in my own practice. I'll make sure I do a lot of those, so all of that's fresh as I work on preparing materials for people to study those practices. So different things will go on, and as a result of that, my practices change from time to time, as most people's will. So I figure it could be useful, interesting, maybe for a few people. Over the next little while, I think I'll make several vlogs on this topic as my Qigong practice, as my routine of Qigong practice changes. Certainly over the next 100 days, I'm doing 100 days of vlogs. And so within that time, what I focus on in my practice is bound to change at least a couple of times. Maybe entirely, or maybe just parts of what I do will change as I have different needs or different focuses. It's not going to be changing every day or even every week, but there'll be an opportunity to maybe do several of these vlogs to give an example of, hey, I was doing this, and then for whatever reason it changed, I started doing this, and for whatever reason it changed and I started doing this. So these are just going to be little snapshots of what my Qigong practice looks like at different points. And that might be informative for people understanding, hey, how their own Qigong practice may develop, may change, particularly if they have a wide knowledge of different practices. I guess the first thing maybe in terms of what I'm doing now is when I'm doing my practice. With my work, teaching online courses, it means I'm working with people all over the world in different time zones. And because of that, that means I'm often working early in the morning or relatively late at night, and sometimes in the middle of the day as well. to fit in with other people's time zones to be able to connect with them. Then, of course, I have a lot of other work to fit in as well, but not necessarily, connecting with someone in a different time zone. But because I have these different, schedule different times or at different times of day, it's often quite challenging to have a really regular Qigong practice routine. But yeah, because of the different requirements. And so at the moment, what I'm doing, which I find is often the easiest way to make sure I get a really regular routine, and I think that's true of a lot of people, is I'm just getting up extra early to make sure I have time to fit in that regular practice before I then get on with all of my other things. Because otherwise, if I'm trying to do it at different times of day around appointments, it makes it tough often. So I'm doing most of my practice starting at about 5 a.m. at the moment, just so I can fit it in, make it regular. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of inner fire breath work at the moment. I probably spend about 45 minutes doing inner fire breath work. It's like quite a decent session of breath work. And I've probably been doing that for about a month, maybe a little bit over a month. And I just felt the need that it's like, there's some things in there that I could really benefit from at the moment. And because I hadn't focused on it lately, I didn't get in and straight away do all of the inner fire breathwork practices. I started by focusing on, there were just a few key ones that I felt a particular need for. And so I focused mainly on those. And then as those started to come more easily to me, I've then added in more of the other breathing practices we do in the inner fire breathwork. And until now, I'm doing a full inner fire breathwork session, doing a whole sequence of different breathwork practices. And that takes me about 45 minutes, really enjoying it. One of the things with these different practices is, well, you get different benefits from them at different times. Good. One of the reasons why it's good to focus on different things at different times. But also as you revisit practices and get into them again, often you see parts of them with fresh eyes. And so some different nuances come out. And also simply by spending more time with the practices, sometimes different things come through. And so I'm having some nice little experiences with some new little details coming to the surface for me, or gaining a richer appreciation of some of the parts of those breathwork practices. So that's great. Then in addition to that, I'm doing just one movement from the moving whooshing practices that we teach in the Elemental Alchemy Qigong program. So within that program, there's like tons of different practices, even amongst just the whooshing practices, a whole lot of different practices. I'm doing just one movement. And I'm doing that same movement in two different ways. I'm doing it in the standard way, and then I'm also doing it in a modified way. I'm doing both of those, and that's because there's something that I'm wanting to correct within my own body, within my own energy. Yes, even when you've been doing Qigong for many, many years, there's different things that go out of balance, or sometimes deep patterns that it takes time before your body, your energy system is ready to release and move through and beyond them, to grow out of them. And so, yeah, there's some stuff I'm working on at the moment, and this one movement is very focused on helping me with some things that's useful to me. So just that one movement, I spent a good little bit of time on that to gain a therapeutic benefit from it. And then in addition to that, I'm also doing a lot of Qigong walking lately. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, I was wanting to just do more walking. As I mentioned, as a Qigong teacher, but as someone teaching online, a lot of my work is very similar to so many other people's these days. It's sitting in front of a computer. It's just the reality of it. And it's really easy to just spend too much of the day sitting in front of a computer. And I thought, I really need to have some discipline to make sure that I am getting just the physical activity that I need on a regular basis. And so I decided I'm going to make sure that I get my 10,000 steps every day. Super simple thing, right? But it's a good way to just make sure that I don't just, as well as my Qigong practice, just sit on the computer all day. I get up and I walk. And so as part of this, it's been quite natural. It's like, well, while I'm walking, it just kind of comes instinctively in many ways. I start doing some Qigong while I'm walking. And so I started doing just one single focus, one Qigong walking practice. And I did that. So again, I've been doing quite a bit of Qigong walking for maybe the last month or so. And yeah, I started with just one. And I probably did that for a couple of weeks, just working on this one Qigong walking practice. And then there came a certain point where that was going nicely. The energy was flowing really nicely, and it just felt like, it's time to bring in some of the other Qigong walking practices. And so I've started to include, I'm still working with the one I started with, but include some others, because there's some Qigong walking practices that build on each other, where one practice supports the next, supports the next, supports the next. There's a sequence that, which support them. And so at this point, I'm doing a series of about 6 different Qigong walking practices, each feeding into the next. There's more that then build on that probably over the next little while I'll work into as well. But, where I'm at the moment, it's, again, similar to the inner fire breathwork. I haven't focused on the Qigong walking practices for a while, so it's really nice to revisit them, to be, bringing those principles back to the fore and experiencing those flows of energy from within those practices getting stronger. And also, picking up some new little nuances and details just from doing those practices. And at the moment, again, I'm up to doing a series of about 6. That feels about right for me. I'm spending time with those ones and like bringing different things out. At some point over the next little while, I'll probably move on and add another one as I keep fleshing out that practice. So so that's my routine at the moment. About 45 minutes of inner fire breathwork, 10 or 15 minutes of just this one movement from the moving wuxing Qigong practices, and normally, about an hour of walking Qigong every day. So that's 2 hours in total. That's pretty reasonable. In terms of for your own practice, you might not do that much. It's not like you have to do, I'm not trying to say, hey, you should do 2 hours just like me. Often you can have a very fulfilling practice in a relatively short amount of time, depending on what you have going on. You might find that 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and that's great. That gives you something that helps balance your energy out for the day. Awesome. That might be great. Or equally, you might have some time in your life where it works for you to do more than 2 hours. This is not, I'm not making this vlog as a, so you can necessarily compare yourself to me or anything like that, but just as, again, maybe a series of little snapshot examples of what I'm doing with my Qigong practice and how that changes over time. Hopefully it'll be useful for at least some of you watching. All right, I look forward to seeing you on another vlog soon.